But this is where we think the industry is going. 2013 or the early days of wearables was just about data. You know what? It tells you about steps, calories, Fitbit, Jawbone, steps, calories, sleep. What does it really mean? We don't run life through steps and calories. It has to be more meaningful, right? After that, it became all about apps. Yeah, it's good, interesting information. What we believe where big data can play a role and a part in is basically knowledge and behavior change. And that's a framework which we are kind of working on. I'll kind of talk about it briefly, looking at how do you take the data, information, create knowledge and insights, and actually take people and make a behavioral change. Right? And this is where we are very focused on looking at environmental data. We do not, actually, if you really look at, I'll give you a use case. This is what I would like the system to do, and this is what we're working towards. Let's say this morning I woke up, I only slept for 5 hours. The Geo app will tell you, Punacha, you slept for 5 hours. And here are the 5 reasons, right? One is you flew from New York to Bangalore. Simple, looked at my calendar, figured that out, right? 2, it says, basically we also noticed that on the days you have more than 4 cups of coffee, you seem to have affects your sleep, because it pretty much knows when I have coffee, right? It does the pattern correlation. 3rd, it can say, we also notice every time you call this person before you go to bed, maybe my investor, it affects my sleep, right? Phone calls, call logs, heart rate. Very interesting correlation, right? Meeting, heart rate, stress, anxiety, interesting correlation. The last thing you can tell me is that on the days when the pressure, temperature, UV index is so and so, it affects your sleep. This is not very complicated. Actually, it's the first level is just awareness, and everything can be done on the phone today. And what we're doing is very simple things. We turn the camera on and off periodically. I can tell you about, okay? I can tell you about light. I can tell you at 8 o'clock, I just turn my camera on and off like a light meter. I can tell you, Punacha, you know what? You should turn the lights down a little bit, because if you have too much of blue light 2 hours before you go to bed, I think it affects your sleep, right? I can sample noise periodically throughout the day, correlate it with an event, and look at the impact of noise and sound on my lifestyle, right? I think this computer went to sleep. It's not the system, I think it's the computer. Oh, 5:30, 4:30, is that a shut off? I don't see a screen here. Okay, so I think, so that's really talking about environmental correlation. So what we started doing is that we started putting a system together. We basically started analyzing heterogeneous data streams, right? So today, if you look at it, it's my accelerometer data. I could be wearing a Fitbit, or I could have a galvanic skin response device. I could have different apps, Foursquare, check-in. I can have my lat long on my phone. So we take a bunch of heterogeneous data, and we start basically correlating and aggregating them into life events. And that's the algorithm which we've been working on over the last 2 years. And now what we can do is basically start predicting people's behavior, right? I can now go back and say, on the days when the allergy count, pollen count, or particulate count is so and so, right? If Punacha is prone to asthma, and he's now started running, if he runs more than 10 minutes with this particular allergy pollen count, I think we should notify him that he might get an asthma attack, right? Very interesting information. So now it's not telling me not to run. It's basically giving me a notification, be sensitive, that this is what's going on. Or if I'm prone to sunlight strokes, heat strokes, I can say, by the way, it's looking cloudy, but it's actually the UV index is quite high. If you are out more than so and so, and we're looking at your pattern, and these days it affects your sleep, you know what? Why don't you exercise indoors, right? Very interesting, especially in Bangalore. Very important, right? The last thing we can do is also take data streams and start looking at, I told you what to do. I told you it affects your health. How do I make a behavior change? Now that's really, I can give you all the information in the world, all the data in the world, but can I actually get you to make a behavior change? And this is where we took the data, the knowledge discovery, and we started putting together what we call behavior models, right? So we started looking at this model called the Duhigg model, which is basically looking at habit loop, right? How many people smoke? Very healthy crowd. That's actually good. But anyway, let's pretend somebody knows a smoker, right, in their life? Okay, perfect. So typically when you look at behavior, there's this concept what we call the cue, reward, craving, routine, right? So typically I'll talk about this a little bit. So for anything to happen, there has to be a cue, right? Cue is only 5 things. It is basically a place, people, emotion, a previous event, four things. When the cue happens, there's typically a reward. And then there's a craving and a routine, right? So I'll give example over here. Smoking. The cue is I just finished a meeting, it's with my boss, I hate him. Cue, boss, meeting, right? Oh, which one? There, is it? Okay, don't walk on the wire. Got it. Okay, so cue is finish the meeting. Moment you finish the meeting, the reward is relaxation. You want to feel relaxed after this investor meeting or you're meeting with your manager, right? And the routine and the craving is nicotine, and the routine is smoking, right? You can never change the cue. There's always going to be a meeting. You always have to go to the office. You also always want to feel relaxed, right? What you got to do is insert a new routine, right? And this is where we are bringing in the concept of micro tasks. Let's say most doctors, you go and do a physical health checkup once a year. Typically, they'll say, you know what, your cholesterol is slightly elevated, you have a little bit of fatty liver, and that's pretty much everybody, right? And then they'll tell you, you know what, you need to lose at least, for my case, 20 kgs, right? I'll say, great, doctor. You know what, never going to happen, right? But okay, let me try. But what we started looking at is tiny habits. So when you get older, especially in the 40s and 45, flexibility is an issue because your body becomes very stiff. So you got to become more flexible. So what we started doing is introducing this concept with the knowledge, giving you tiny habits. So say, you know what, let's say you're stressed, right? And you're driving the car. We can then push you a breathing routine. Just do a 1-minute breathing routine before you're in the car. Everybody can breathe. Breathing is something you can do as you're sitting, right? So do tiny habits to bring about behavior change. Okay, that's good. Where was I? I was here. Okay, so you know what? I'm not going to bore you to death with architecture. I'll send you the slides. We talked about so this is interesting because what we started doing was trying to look at the temporal sensor data and really started creating this concept of hierarchical database which looked at low-level events, started aggregating them and correlating them into high-level functions. Right? Punacha was walking where? Who was he walking with? When was he walking? And what was his body when he was walking? Right? Along with this, we started looking at different multiple data streams and associating it to health and wellness. And this is an important point over here. We looked at health and wellness as 10 points, right? And this is what we call our ranking algorithm. So we look at wellness as first one is intention. You got to have the right intention. If I am 45, I want to get healthy, I got to figure out what do I want to be? Because chronologically I'm 45, biologically I could be 55 or 35. It's based on my intention, right? Because some people say, you're very young, you do this or whatever, it's intention. Second one is what we call the mind-body connection. Yoga, pranayama, tai chi. And now we have research which is proving that practices like yoga, pranayama, right, tai chi, Eastern philosophies, and lifestyle, which is diet, actually lengthens the telomeres, which control aging, and actually reverses aging. And this is a study called Self-Directed Biological Transformation from Harvard, MIT, Scripps, Mount Sinai, and UCSD, from Chopra Foundation. So we started looking at the data and taking that protocol and looking at how do we actually get people to do pranayama. Imagine trying to get everybody to do pranayama. Maybe in China it's pretty hard, right? But you can ask them to breathe in different ways, right? So we started bringing small micro habits into people's lives. And we started integrating that into, like I said, we want to be able to ask questions into the system. When the allergy is so-and-so, high, medium, low, when Punacha starts running in Ranagar, within how many minutes is he going to get a asthma attack? If I know it, I'm actually going to send a message into my phone and say, Punacha, today is not a good day to run inside in Gold's gym, right? So these are kind of some of the interventions we're looking at. Behavior, I was just talking about it. The cue, like I said, is let's talk about drinking. Very interesting. This is a problem I'm trying to look at because I'm from a place called Coorg. Drinking is almost like breakfast, right? And like, how can you not? If you go to Coorg and say, I want to drink coffee, they're like, okay, good. What's next, right? So I started looking at, let me understand how this drinking works. So I started looking at Bangalore, another trend. We're trending towards alcoholism. Very alarming trend in the teens. I'm not worried about people in the 40s or 50s, it's good, I think. But if you're in the 20s and you're trying to get there, it's actually pretty alarming, right? So we started looking at how do we look at these systems and bring about awareness to people. I always tell people you cannot stop smoking. That's always the wrong thing to do. When you go and tell somebody stop smoking, it's the worst thing to do. But you ask them to start running or doing something else. If they love running, they will stop smoking because they'll want to run longer, run a marathon, do something. And because they love running, they'll stop smoking. The moment you tell somebody to stop something, they'll do more of it, right? It's like meditation. Most people say, close your eyes, don't think of anything. That's exactly what you'll be doing opposite, right? So we started looking at this model, and it's quite interesting because this is what we have modeled in our platform. You look at the queue. A queue is typically 5:30. Actually, I got to go, sorry. But 5:30 is typically time, typically queued. Place, time, people, location, emotion, right? If I can detect time, which is on my phone and my calendar, typically what happens at 5:30 in the evening, there'll be a friend of mine who'll come and say, come on, let's go grab a drink, right? Queue. What's the reward? Let me just chill out. Had a pretty stressful day, right? Craving is for relief. Routine is to go have a beer, right? So what we started doing is that in the system, can I give you a micro task? Can I do interventions? 5:30 in the evening, instead of Punacha being called for a drink, somebody calls me for a coffee in coffee day, right? Or can I just remind you saying that, Punacha, you know what, you made an intention to cut down on your carbs. Here's an alternative, right? So you bring this concept of micro tasks to kind of bring about behavioral changes. And if we're talking about GeoIndex, we started looking at things like mind-body connection, exercise, nutrition, emotional toxicity of relationships, people. We started looking at exercise, love and relationships, financial and career. So almost a holistic approach to health and wellness, and platforming it, where we can actually now use the mobile phone to help people transform lives. So what is the insight we want to get? We want to give people insight to kind of understand themselves, the body-mind connection, right? We want to ask about, tell me something about me, okay? Punacha, on the days you have more than 5 cups of coffee, you're not going to sleep more than 5 hours. Interesting. Very simple. I can actually figure that out just on my computer, right? Or you can say when you have calls with so-and-so people in so-and-so meetings, we have noticed a pattern affects your sleep, right? And we've been trying to solve just one interesting problem, sleep. And with that, we believe we can make some changes, awareness in your body, right? Once you solve one problem, it kind of starts sorting other problems too, right? Which events in your personal life impact your health and wellness? Spikes in the data, right? Human beings are very irrationally predictable. We actually do the same thing irrationally. That's it. So we can actually find correlation in people's lives. Can we find regional or global data spikes to predict certain events? There was actually a case study with a professor we were working with when basically in a school district in California, a whole bunch of school children fell sick and they could not figure out why. And what they realized when they started looking at the environmental data, there was actually an earthquake underneath, which had basically, in the environment, had created a lot of pollen, right? And the environmental particles had basically affected the children, reduced their resistance, they all fell sick. So something which had happened in the environment caused a certain area of people to get sick. There's also a very interesting report where in the US, in Baltimore, when the Orioles game happens, when the baseball game happens, there's a high incidence of hospital admissions and schizophrenia. Basically particulate 2.5, which is the pollution. So now, interesting, imagine in a place like Bangalore, pollution goes up. Hospitals, people can be aware there is going to be a certain amount of instability going on, right? It's like, instead of looking at trending for events on Twitter, we want to say what's trending in health and wellness. And we believe that if there is instability in health and wellness in a city or a state or a country, there is going to be unrest. There'll be, at a high level. So, other interesting thing, just for fun, it'd be interesting, who's having a day like me, right? Who is born in this day and this time who's exactly like me? So instead of looking at connections based on, I worked at Nortel and Motorola, so John Doe worked at Nortel and Motorola, so somebody else should be connected to me. That's kind of interesting. It's degrees of separation relationship. We are looking at a social graph which looks at who has a body like me, who is 45 years old, has got busted knees, but who can run a marathon, right? Interesting. There might be 15 people like me all over the world in maybe Prague, Brazil, China, whatever, and can we connect them? So that's really what we are embarked on, which is basically, can we transform personal and societal wellness using big data and analytics? And that's really our promise. Thoughts, questions, ideas? Sure.
What is
So until now, so there are multiple ways to make revenue. So we are right now looking at traction. So our goal today is to build enough of a scalable network. I think once we get scale, there are a couple of things we can do. One is we can go the freemium LinkedIn model, where let's say I'm doing a breathing routine, and I can actually now provide you a video, which is from a certified yoga instructor or of certified content from an expert, right? Two, I can actually now create a wellness marketplace, which is what we are doing. So like there's an interesting question I think was asked. If the father is searching for shoes, which is actually meant for his son, now what, right? But now if I realize that I might be searching for yoga for my wife, but I happen to be only doing, taekwondo. So Geo will understand what is my lifestyle, because it's actually measuring my day and my thing. So now I can actually do basically a lot of e-commerce. Two, I can do personnel and people matching, right? I actually just landed in New York. I'm interested in pranayama. Who's the closest pranayama instructor, right? So we'll kind of build into a, I would say, wellness marketplace as we go along. But right now it's purely looking at, can we provide people meaningful data? And can I create a score, very much like a cloud score? Can I create a wellness score?
Yeah, I think it's related to the previous question, but I just wanted to know, what is your approach? Are you building a platform and then you'll open up the platform and
Yes.
multiple people will build apps on that platform?
Correct. So it's an API model.
Is that
That's really the model.
And
So
how
we
far?
will,
Yeah.
go ahead.
How far ahead are you in this platform building?
So right
and the
now
release
we are
cycle?
actually in the process of deciding whether to launch in South by Southwest, which is in March 17th. So we are right now in beta, and this is something we are doing in India. It's Indiranagar, Bangalore. We're actually looking at data in India, because we figured this will be the perfect ecosystem to make it work. And so we are in beta. So I think we are very open. My goal over the next 6 months is to kind of hit it with about 100,000 people in the beta stage. And then I think by end of the year, we'll go public. We already have done very interesting connections with people who are in retail kiosks, like in the Rite Aid pharmacies of the world. We also are talking to interesting tier 1 OEMs in India, who basically have, like in the retail health, like healthcare, right? Like the Anganwadis, where they actually go do like a community healthcare, those kind of things.
Thanks.
We are open. So we don't have, actually, what we're looking for is that we want to denormalize. It should be very affordable. Anybody with a smartphone, right? Requirement is an Android smartphone. So we're designing for Android as a mobile. But I think anything above from that, I think from an age-wise, I would say it'll be up to about 60. 55, 60 is kind of what we're looking at. After that, the interaction might be very different. Having said that, we are tying up with a retail, I told you CVS and Rite Aid in the US, where they can go put their blood pressure cuffs. It's called Higgy stations, where we can even collect people. Because the older people go to pharmacies to get their medication refilled, right? So we can even collect data from them. Sure. Thank you.
All right, many thanks, Mr. Machaya. We'd like to felicitate you on that note. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you so much. Looking forward to more of your contribution.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so that brings us to an end of today's session. I hope each one of you had certain key takeaways, and all the presentations will be certainly shared within 5 working days to all the delegates. And yes, we definitely, as an extension of this conference, we're planning to organize meetups every quarter, which is not paid and it's free of cost. It's extended so that, we have that connect. And apart from that,